Right. A very good afternoon. Welcome to this session of semester 4, which is for the BA second years, right, on English poetry. Well, previously in block 1, we did touch upon the British poetry of where we learnt about William Shakespeare, John Milton, his works, John Donne, Andrew Marvell, and Alexander Pope, right? And their poetries, right? Now, moving on to the next block, that is block 2, and we start with uh, the period first. Let us quickly have a look at the period in which this category falls into. Right now, the earlier Pope was a neoclassical Augustan age. Then the prior to it Elizabethan period. So we've been touching upon the poetry of all the periods. So now we've come into the Romantic period. So Romanticism. So before looking into the understanding the key feature poetry about this period, let us look into the features of this romanticism as such, right? And then only we'll be able to acquaint ourselves with the poetry of this particular era, right? Because there was a kind of a change of poetic language between the earlier poets and the romantic poets, right? So this is what we're going to first and foremost look into the features of this romantic period, right? So, when we talk about this romanticism, so it was an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that emerged in the late 18th century. I hope I'm audible. I can see Pranati in the meet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Right. So, and and this romantic period flourished in the 19th century too. So if you look at romantic period, you look at it in two different periods. Like you have the early romantic period, and then you have the later romanticism. Okay, there are two periods for it, right? And that was particularly in Europe. It was a reaction against the rationalism and formalism of the age of enlightenment and the structured form of neoclassical period. Because after some point of time they did not like this kind of an formalism and kind of a rationalism that reflected even in the poetry, right? So romanticism emphasized emotion, individualism, nature, and the imagination. Now when you talk about this emotion, if you look at the key features of romanticism, as I told you, it's like emotion over reason. It means that romantics, the people who belong to this period, the poets especially, were called as romantics, placed a high value on individual feelings, imagination, and emotional expression. In contrast to the Enlightenment emphasis on logic and reason. I mean, they were totally against to that kind of a, emphasis on logic and reason. They did not like it of the Enlightenment period. Next, moving on to the celebration of nature. What does it mean? For them, the Romantics, nature was seen as a source of inspiration and truth. They often portrayed nature as pure, sublime, and a reflection of the human soul. So that was the celebration of nature. That is one key aspect of Romanticism. Then, focusing on the individual. Romantic writers and artists celebrated the individual, often exploring themes of personal freedom, self expression, and the power of the human spirit. Next, rejection of industrialization. Now, romantics were often critical of the rapid industrialization and urbanization of the time, which they saw as a very dehumanizing. They idealized rural life and nature as a refuge from the harshness of modern society. Why modern society? Because there they could see there was an the trend of industrialization and urbanization was coming in to the society also. That was reflecting in the society also, the effect of this industrialization and urbanization. So people were wanting to, I mean, move towards the rural life, and they were more wanted to connect with the nature. Right. Exoticism and the supernatural. What does this mean? So, these romanticism frequently delved into the supernatural, the mysterious, and the exotic. They embrace the unknown with a fascination for Gothic themes, folklore, and dreams. Now, if you look at the major figures, you come across the poets William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Lord Byron, P.B. Shelley, and John Keats in England, and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Friedrich Schiller in Germany. Right? Now, this particular romanticism had a profound impact on literature, art, music, philosophy, and influencing at the same time influencing later movements such as modernism and symbolism. It helps shape a focus on personal expression, creativity, and a deep connection to the natural world. The themes of freedom, emotion, and individualism continue to resonate in contemporary culture. Right. Now, as I told you, that there are two generations of romantics. I mean, as I told you, it's like one is called the early, which the time period starts from 1700 to late early 1800. So late 1700 to early 1800. Now the poets who belong to that early romanticism were, they are also called as the first generation: William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Blake. And the features more or less the same thing. That is, as I told you, they would focus a lot on nature and emotions and individual, and they love to celebrate simple and rural life, and they believed in the power of imagination and personal feeling. Okay. And then comes the second generation romantics, that is called later romanticism. Now, who are the people? Like the period, if you look at it, it comes from early of 1800 to the mid of 1800. So the poets were Lord Byron, P.B. Shelley, John Keats. Right. Now, looking at the features of the second generation were, they were more intensely focused on personal freedom, passion, and idealism. More intensely. The intensity was quite great, I mean, quite heavy. Now, a deeper interest in beauty, art, death, and the mystery of life. That is how the Gothic literature has evolved after that. Often more melancholic, emotional, and rebellious. Now, they had a very strong belief in the power of poetry. They thought that poetry would change the world. So, the second generation, right? So, if you look at the difference between the first and the second generation, they were people who loved nature, was loved simplicity and a peaceful emotion. But when it comes to the second generation, they were very intense, looking at the intensity, imagination, passion, deep emotions, and so on. Right? So, moving on to the next slide. Yeah, they are some of the major figures of this period, as I already mentioned. So, next, the poet about whom we are going to learn, in given in our text, in our syllabus. The first poet will be William Wordsworth. As I told you, he belongs to the first generation or the early romanticism, right? So, he was an English poet and one of the central figures of Romanticism. He is best known for his deep connection to nature, the celebration of individual emotion, and his advocacy for simplicity and the power of the imagination. Wordsworth's work often reflects his belief in the transformative power of nature and the idea that everyday experiences could be sources of poetic inspiration. Now, his most famous works, lines composed a few miles about Tintern Abbey, and also he brought out lyrical ballads. I hope you all remember that was a kind of a complete change of a transition after that. Along with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, he brought out this lyrical ballads. It was a significant departure from the formal, rigid styles of earlier poetry. And Wordsworth Prelude is another landmark work, a semi autobiographical poem that explores the development of his own poetic version and his own growing connection to nature. Now, Wordsworth's poetry is characterized by its use of common language, emotional depth, and a focus on nature as a reflection of the human soul. Now, his works had a lasting influence on English poetry, shaping the Romantic movement and later literary trends. He was also appointed Poet Laureate of England in 1843. So, this was a kind of a brief introduction of William Wordsworth. Right. Next, the poem which has been prescribed in the textbook of the William Wordsworth is The Solitary Reaper. This is one of William Wordsworth's most celebrated poems, and it was first published in 1807. Right. So the poem explores the emotional and spiritual effect of a young Scottish woman's song, actually, as she sings while harvesting grain alone in a field. Okay. And the song, though unknown to the poet in terms of its language and meaning, it evokes a kind of a deep emotion and leads to a reflective meditation on the power of nature and the transcendent qualities of music. So, if you look at the summary of the Solitary Reaper, here it's about a, in simple language, if you would like to listen to it, it's like a speaker who sees a woman working alone in a field in the Scottish Highlands, and she's cutting grain and singing a song while she works. And the speaker is very touched by her singing because it is full of deep feeling and sounds very beautiful. Even though he doesn't understand the words of the song, because it is in another language, he can still feel that it is about something very important and maybe something sad or from the past, right? And the song makes him think very deeply about that particular theme of that song because he cannot follow what she's singing because it's totally in a different language. Later, even after the woman stops singing, the man still remembers her voice. The memory of the song stays with him and continues to move him. He compares her singing to the songs of birds like the nightingale and the cuckoo, which are peaceful and make people feel calm and happy. Now, in the end, the man realizes that the song, even though it was short and he didn't understand the words, will stay in his heart forever. So it shows that music and emotion can be powerful even without knowing the exact meaning. So this is what is all about. Right. Next, moving on to the themes, okay, of this poem, The Solitary Reaper. It is the power of nature, where Wordsworth frequently explores the relationship between humans and nature. And here in this poem, The Solitary Reaper, nature is not only a backdrop but a source of deep emotional experience. The Solitary Reaper song, emerging from the natural landscape, represents the connection between the human soul and the natural world. Right? So, the universal language of emotion, what does that mean? So, this is again another theme. See, even though the speaker cannot understand the language of the song, he is deeply moved by its emotional power, isn't it? So, this highlights the theme of universal emotions that transcend language barriers. So, the song conveys feelings of sorrow or longing, emotions that resonate with anyone, regardless of language or background. Next theme, the sublime and transcendence. So, the poem suggests that beauty and art have the ability to lift the soul beyond the ordinary, right? So, the Song of the Reaper, though brief and simple, becomes a transcendent experience for the poet. It's a manifestation of the sublime, a moment that reaches beyond the material world into something eternal. Right. Coming to the memory and imagination. So, Wordsworth explores how memories of profound experiences can linger long after the event itself. So, the impact of the song stays with the poet. And through memory, it continues to move him. So the imagination transforms the fleeting moment into something eternal, right? And okay, now coming to the rhyme scheme, the poem follows a consistent A B C rhyme scheme for each stanza. This structured rhyme scheme reflects the regularity and rhythm of the reaper's song, enhancing the musicality of the poem and mirroring the song's cadence. Right. Now let us quickly look into the visual imagery where Wordsworth has used in this poem. He uses vivid visual imagery to create a rich scene of the reaper working in the field, like behold her, single in the field. Now, the solitary figure of the reaper standing alone in the vast field creates a visual image of isolation, making her stand out against the natural landscape. Okay. Now, the solitary reaper, what does this gives you? What does this trigger? The kind of an imagery. The phrase itself evokes an image of solitude, emphasizing the lone figure in the expansive field, right? The veil profound is overflowing with the sound. So, the use of veil profound, what does it suggest? A deep, almost mystical landscape, adding depth to the scene as it amplifies the emotional impact of the song. Okay. Now, as if her song could have no ending. What does this mean? The repetition of this phrase evokes a sense of endlessness, implying that the Reaper's song, though fleeting in time, leaves a lasting impact. Right. Okay. Now, what are the phrases which we come across which describes the impact of the song on the poet? A voice so thrilling. Okay, that is a phrase which describes the intense emotional reaction the speaker experiences upon hearing the song, right? The music in my heart I bore. What does this suggest? The effect of the song is not just auditory but emotional, because he's still carrying the music in his heart even long after the song ends and long after it was heard no more. What does this phrase describe? It describes the memory of the song lingers with the speaker. What does it mean that it is? It has a great emotional impact and everlasting and powerful, far beyond the fleeting moment in which it was sung. So the sung, though known to none, was heard by all. Now, this line implies that while the song's meaning remains mysterious to the poet, its emotional depth is universally felt, transcending language and reaching everyone who hears it. So, this is what you don't really understand the wordings of the song, but still, the universal feeling, that is, the emotions, could be felt by the poet. The melancholy strain. Wordsworth suggests that the song might have conveyed sadness or sorrow, and because he could figure out that there was a strain of melancholy, Melancholy is what? A sad tune or a tone, right? And the phrase reflects the deep emotional impact it had on the speaker, right? Next, we move on to Unit 5, that is again the second phase in Romanticism of 19th century, right? And we've already discussed the features of this phase also, isn't it? The second generation. Uh, so this is also called late Romanticism, right? So 1820 to the mid of 19th century, and the poets of the second phase of Romanticism were um, P.B. Shelley, John Keats, Lord Byron. Okay, right. So let us quickly look at the brief introduction of Percy Bysshe Shelley. Okay, I think it's very well given in your textbook also, P.B. Shelley. He belongs to the uh, a period from 1792 to 1822. He was an English romantic poet known for his lyrical poetry, radical ideas, and exploration of themes such as individual freedom, political activism, and the power of nature. Shelley is considered one of the most innovative poets of the Romantic movement, using his work to challenge authority, social norms, and the status quo. Now, his poetry is marked by its emotional intensity, philosophical depth, and visionary qualities. Some of his most famous works include Ozymandias, or you can pronounce it Ozymandias, a sonnet about the impermanence of human power, and Prometheus Unbound, a lyrical drama that explores the themes of liberation and the human spirit's potential for growth. And he was also a fierce advocate for social and political change, using his poems to voice his radical political views, including his support for the French Revolution. Though Shelley's works were often controversial during his lifetime, particularly due to his unconventional beliefs on politics, religion, and morality, his influence on later literature has been profound. His idealism, advocacy for freedom, and visionary poetry continue to inspire readers today. Right? So let us quickly move on to the poem which has been prescribed in the textbook by P.P. Shelley. Right. So here the poem is written by P.B. Shelley, and it's all about the west wind, which is strong, wild, and full of power. So I hope you can figure out what is the poem I'm talking about. Ode to the West Wind. So the poet talks to the west wind like as if it is a person, asking it to listen to him. Okay. So in part one, if you look at it, the wind and the leaves. So the wind blows in autumn and makes the dead leaves fall from trees. The poet imagines the leaves as ghosts being pushed by the wind. The wind is also carrying seeds underground where they will rest until spring. So the wind brings both death and new life, isn't it? So the wind is like something which can bring fall and spring, according to this poem by P.B. Shelley. Right. And in the next second stanza, the poet now talks about how the wind moves through the sky. It pushes clouds around like waves in the air, and these clouds can bring storms. The wind is very powerful and changes the weather. right? Okay. So in the first stanza, he talks the power of wind in terms with respect to the leaves. In the second, he talks about the wind, the power of wind with respect to the sky. That's how it moves the clouds. The third stanza, wind and the sea. So the poet says the wind also moves the ocean and makes huge waves. Even the deepest parts of the sea are shaken by the wind. This shows how strong and wild the wind is. So here in the fourth stanza, the poet starts talking about himself. He says he used to be wild and free like the wind when he was young. Now he feels weak and tired, and he wants the wind to give him that strength. He wishes the wind could lift him up and carry him like it does with the leaves or the clouds. And the final stanza here, uh, the poet asks the wind to spread his words and ideas to the world. It's a kind of a hope of the poet. Okay? Like how it spreads leaves and seeds, he wants the wind to spread his words and ideas to the world. He wants his poetry to inspire others and bring change. He believes that even if things are bad now, that is in winter. Okay, he's like, the context is winter. That the things are bad now, a better time will come. Better time is nothing but spring. Okay, so this is a brief summary of the poem Ode to the West Wind. What are the themes in the poem? It's power of nature. The wind is a symbol of nature's strength and its ability to destroy and create. That's how the dead leaves fall down and the seeds which are, brought down by the wind come up as a new sapling or a plant, isn't it? So it's like destroy and create. A change and transformation is another theme of the poem. The wind brings autumn, but it also brings seeds that will grow in spring. It shows that even hard times can lead to better things. Hope and rebirth. The poet believes that after sadness or winter, joy or spring will come, right? And the power of art and ideas. The poet wants his words to travel far and wide, just like the wind spreads seeds, right? Looking at the rhyme scheme of this poem, he uses a special rhyme pattern called terza rima, which goes like this: A B A, B C B, C D C, D E D, E E in each stanza. Okay. Now, this pattern links the lines together just like the wind connects everything in nature. Right. Let us quickly look into the symbolic structure of the wind. Because here, throughout the poem, the wind has been symbolized, isn't it? Okay. Nature's power. So the wind is west wind, especially, it's a symbol for nature's power. It can destroy and create, change. It brings autumn and prepares for spring, showing that the life keeps moving and changing. Inspiration. The poet wants the wind to inspire him and carry his words to others. Freedom and energy. The wind moves freely and with great force, which the poet admires and wants to be like. So these are some of the symbolic structures of the wind. That is nature's power, change, inspiration, freedom, and energy. Right. Next, let us take up the next poet, that is John Keats. Okay, right. He was a famous English poet who lived during the Romantic period. Now, he was born on, again, let me tell you, it's a second generation poet. Okay, and he was born on October 31st, and 1795 in London, and he died at a young age on February 23rd, 1821, when he was just 25 years old. Even though he lived a short life, Keats wrote some of the most beautiful and powerful poems in the English language. His poems are full of strong feeling, beautiful images from nature, and deep thoughts about life and death. Now, some of his most famous poems include Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to a Grecian Urn, To Autumn, La Belle, Dame Sans Mercy. Okay, and these are some of the writings. Okay, this is some of the poems of John Keats, and he loved nature, beauty, and imagination. He believed that a thing of beauty is a joy forever. So, a line from one of his poems, he often wrote about how beauty can bring comfort even in sad times. Though he was not very famous while he was alive, but today he is remembered as one of the greatest poets in English literature. Okay. The poem which has been prescribed in the textbook, which is given and we have to study for the exam, is Ode on a Grecian Urn, right? By John Keats, right? So here there are five stanzas. Uh, Ode on a Grecian Urn is by John Keats is looking at a beautiful ancient Greek vase or the urn that has pictures carved on it. So the poem is all about what he sees and imagines when he looks at those pictures, right? The first one, it's the silent story. It talks about the silent story, the first stanza. He says that the urn is telling a story without words, just pictures. He calls it a historian that shows what life was like long ago. The scenes on the urn are frozen in time, which makes them special and mysterious. Okay, that's the understanding of the first stanza. Moving on to the second, he sees a picture of a boy playing music and two lovers about to kiss. Since it's a painting, the boy will always be playing and the lovers will always be close but never actually kiss. So Keats says that it's okay, that's okay, because their love will stay perfect forever and never fade. Okay, so in this stanza, you get to see the lovers and the music. Next, moving on to the third stanza, Keats continues talking about how the people in the urns pictures never grow old. The trees never lose their leaves. The music never ends. And everyone stays young and happy forever. So, what does this third stanza talk about? Eternal youth. Okay. Now, moving on to the next stanza, that is the fourth stanza, he sees another image where people bringing a cow to be sacrificed. He wonders where they are going and what town they left, where they are coming from and where they are going. The town will always be empty, frozen in that moment. Okay, so what does this talk about? The fourth stanza talks about the mysterious sacrifice, right? And the final stanza, he says that urn will stay the same for centuries, telling its silent story. At the end, the urn speaks and says, beauty is truth, truth is beauty. A famous line meaning that beauty and truth are deeply connected. That's that's the final message according to the final stanza. Right. Right. Looking at the theme, what are the themes of this poem? The Grecian urn. Right. Or on a Grecian urn, the themes are art and time, where art lasts forever while real life changes. Yes, that's how he points out aptly, saying that the figures or the pictures on the urn never grow old, isn't it? So there is nothing like which can have an impact on it. The time doesn't have any sort of impact on it. So beauty and imagination. The urn shows beautiful scenes that makes us imagine stories, isn't it? And Truth in art. Keats believed that beauty is a kind of truth that brings peace. Frozen moments. The poem explores how some moments are perfect because they never change. Next. So, what are these literary devices which have been used in this poem? Okay. So, when it comes to imagery, describes what's on the urn so clearly. Now, look at these literary devices which you come across when you read this poem. Okay. And when you talk about the apostrophe, the poet talks directly to the urn as if it were a person. Then alliteration, repeating consonant sounds like happy, happy bows. Okay. And personification, treating the urn as if it can speak and tell stories. Then paradox, the idea that the people are forever happy but also frozen forever. So this is a kind of a paradoxical statement. Right. Now let us quickly compare what is in comparison with Grecian urn, with that of an ode to the west wind. Let us see quickly. Now the poets, ode on a Grecian urn and ode to the west wind. So John Keats and P.B. Shelley. Main focus ode on a Grecian urn is about a ancient vase with pictures, whereas ode to the west wind is about a powerful and wild west wind. When you talk about the tone, ode on a Grecian urn, it is calm, thoughtful, admiring beauty, whereas ode to the west wind, it's passionate, emotional, intense. Then coming to the theme, the ode on a Grecian urn, beauty lasts through the art, frozen time. Whereas ode to the west wind, it is power of nature, change, rebirth. When you talk about the symbol, urn is a symbolic thing which talks about timeless art and frozen moments. Whereas here in the ode to the west wind, wind is a symbolic figure where it talks about the change, power, inspiration. The style of the poem Ode on a Grecian Urn is gentle and slow, whereas Ode to the West Wind is fast and dramatic. Now, what is the message it conveys? Ode on a Grecian Urn. Art can capture truth and beauty forever, whereas Ode to the West Wind, nature brings destruction but also hope. These are some of the uh, differences between these two poems. Right. So here we are going to stop with the presentation, and I want you all to go through these slides, and I think it will be very much seen on the YouTube thing, and you have to just quickly, you can review it, okay, revise it after you read your textbook. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Tomorrow also we have a session, right? So to, yeah,
Okay, ma'am.
yeah. So you can read and come back, and we can again, I'll clarify your doubts if you have anything. So I'll try to finish Unit 6, and then we also have I think Unit 6 is the last for this block. Yeah. So tomorrow I'll be finishing this block and then start with the third block. Okay. So tomorrow I'll be taking up Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, and their poetries, along with the third block where we're going to talk about Yeats and T.S. Eliot. Okay. And
Okay, ma'am.
yes. So I want you all to kindly go through the book, read it, and come. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Right. Thank you.